Hi guys, it's Claire. I thought I'd do a quick video for you today on the MISTI tool. Now I'm quite new to the MISTI. I've literally only had this about a week, but I'm loving it already and it's making a massive difference to my stamping. Well, not just stamping, lots of other things. And what I wanted to do in this video was make it quite a short and sweet video, but just let you know why I'm loving it and basically why you do need to invest in one. As I say, I'm new to the MISTI. I've only had it a week, but I'm loving it already. It's been out a couple of years now. I saw it when it very first came out and I thought, oh, you know, we don't need that. We've got the Stampin' Up! Stamp-A-Majig, which is a stamp positioner, and there's obviously lots of different brands that do stamp positioners and things like that. But this is completely different, I have to say. It does help you stamp a lot better and do other things a lot better than you could before, or a lot easier than you could before. So the first thing that I found with it is just the simple double stamping. So I'm going to stamp for you on here just a sentiment. We've used this sentiment a lot. It comes from, let me grab the set, it's this Just Right, what's it called, Extra Grand sentiments. Obviously I've pulled those out. But yeah, it's a nice sentiment, but because it's quite a solid thick sentiment, they all are in there, they don't always stamp right first time. No matter how careful you are, you know, you have to be honest, they're not going to always come out perfect every time. But with this you can pop the stamp down, carefully pick it up, make sure everything stays nice and tight in the corner, keep your magnets in place so that nothing moves, and then you're going to ink up your stamp over here. So you've got that in position, you know where it's going to go. You also have got grid lines on here, so you can actually check that that's lined up nice and straight. I'm not too worried about that for a minute, just for this sample, but you know, you can actually line that sentiment up perfectly. Okay, so I'm just going to ink that up as we normally would. Well, normally you would obviously have this on a clear block. Oh, just got a bit of ink on the door there. Yeah, you'd ink it up on a clear block, be lining your clear block over, obviously, and press down, which might be fine. So this is our first little press, and it might come out perfectly. Now it's come out okay over here, but I can see here that it's missed a little bit and it's a bit blotchy. So the best thing about a MISTI is this double stamping. Nothing's moved, nothing's changed. I'm just going to ink the stamp back up. Again, I've got a little bit of ink on the door. I don't know, can you see what I'm doing there? But literally just popping your ink in like you would. Close over. You don't have to particularly push down, just let the door shut. A little tiny push down. And that's so much better. So, I mean, I'm not sure how much you're going to see on camera, but that is so much clearer. It's a nice thick black now. There's no mist bits, no grey bits, nothing, you know, it's absolutely perfect. So that is my sort of number one thing that the MISTI is perfect for. Okay, my number two favourite use for the MISTI is die cut placement. So being able to cut out your sentiment with a die perfectly and lining it up without it being off or slightly wonky or anything is absolutely perfect. So I've just, well, here I've got my favourite thing stamp set, which is called Banner Greetings, and I also have got the matching die. So that and that. I've already stamped one of these out, and again I had to triple stamp this because it's quite a solid stamp. I did have to, you know, close the door 3 times to make sure that I got that all perfect. But anyway, now I've got that, to cut that out with the die, a lot of these dies nowadays are coming as solid dies, and you just can't line that up. That's just impossible to put that die on there, run it through your machine and be able to see that it's going to cut perfectly in the right place. You'll end up with a, you know, a bigger white bit at the bottom or at the top or wherever, but it's impossible to do that. So what the MISTI allows you to do, and what I think is brilliant, is cut your die first and then line up your stamp to go on top. So I've grabbed another piece of white paper, run this through the machine obviously, and just simply cut the die cut my banner out of there. So then I'm going to pop that into the MISTI and put my banner in place. So it's in its hole where it originally came from, and obviously it doesn't matter that it's straight because we're just using the banner. Now you need to line up your stamp perfectly, just laying it on top. Excuse my head a minute, it's probably going to get in shot because I just need to be able to see that that's perfectly lined up on there. Okay, when you're happy with the placement, you can pick up your stamp. Now my bit of paper's just stuck to it, obviously. I'm going to pop that back down where it belongs. So now my stamp, when I close this, is going to be perfectly lined up just there. So let's give this a go. Okay, inked up my stamp. closed it down, give it a little press, and again it will stick because obviously you've got a lot of wet ink on there, it's going to stick. And that's perfect placement. Now again, it hasn't stamped out perfectly, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but it's a little bit blotchy, so we can pop it back in, and if we want to, go over again. Nothing's moved, nothing's changed, so you can go over and do the same thing again until you've got it as dark as you want it. But you get the idea that, you know, you've lined up your die cut piece, and that's absolutely perfect. You've got a perfect little white border around there, you know, and it's brilliant. That's the only way you can do that and get it to look good. And this isn't the only stamp set that comes like this, or stamp and die set. There's loads now that come where you have a solid die, or even if you don't have a solid die, some of the other dies, the open dies, are still quite hard for you to line up. So yeah, it's absolutely excellent for that. Okay, now number 3, another thing that works really well with the MISTI is layering stamping. Now I've got this stamp set from Altenew here, this is Peony Bouquet, and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 layers onto this flower. If you haven't seen these before, I made this card just yesterday and it shows you sort of how to do it. So you build up this depth of colour to get this gorgeous looking flower. Now they are clear stamps, so you can do this without the MISTI. You can eyeball it and line it up and try and get it as neat as you can, but you won't get it as precise as this. I mean, this is absolutely spot on, and you can't beat it. So I'll show you quickly how you do that. Alright, so you start off by doing the outline. Quickly pick up your stamp, and these are newer stamps, so they do stick a little bit to the paper. You'll do that with your darker colour. Now I'm using, because I've got a lot of them, I'm using the Tim Holtz Distress Inks, and these don't stamp perfectly every time because they're a distress ink, they're not a really sharp crisp ink, but it doesn't matter with this because I can do my outline, see it's not perfect, go back in again and put a little bit more on there to give you a much crisper outline. So that's stamp 1. Stamp 2 would be the one where you do the full background. So you can line this up, and as I say, you could do this without a MISTI. You could take your time with a clear block and try and eyeball it and get it right, but the MISTI just makes it so much easier. So I've popped that in position. Again, it's sticking because it's a new stamp, so it's really sticky. Doesn't matter that it moves because I know that I can always pop it back down in that corner and it's in the right place again. So I go in with my lightest colour, and I'm doing this really quick obviously for the video just to show you that it can be done. You would take your time and do this flower a lot better. Close the door, and then you've got your base coat, and it's absolutely perfect. It's not come outside those lines at all. I'm going to put another little coat on there to make it a bit darker. And as I say, I'm rushing here, but you would take your time and really get this inked up well. But that's good enough for this demonstration. Stamp number 3 from this set would be this one here with a little bit more detail to it. So you would line that up. Excuse my head if it's getting in the way, because obviously you do need to be above it to be able to see that everything's lined up properly. Close the door, get everything back in position, and go in with your slightly darker colour. And again, it's a little bit blotchy because it's a distress ink, but it doesn't matter because by the time you go back in with your second coat, that evens out. And also, as you probably know, these, as they dry, they even out a bit anyway, these distress inks. That's really nice. And then stamp number 4, oops, which is the final details. In place. Again, I apologise if my head's in the way. Oopsie, I'm struggling to line this up. Now if you were doing this with your stamp and it was on your clear block and you were trying to line it up, by now your ink would be dry and you'd be getting frustrated, but here I can just move it around until I see that it's in the right place. I can't actually see at the minute, which is typical. Is that right? I think that's right. Okay, that looks good. Pick that up and then in with your darkest colour. Move that one out of the way. We're now actually on this one, which is Wild Honey. Perfect. And again, I'll give it another coat. And that's it. So you've got a really nice flower with a lot of depth to it, lined up perfectly. You haven't gone outside the edges at all. Just really, really, really nice. And as I say, it turns into a lovely colour. The ink evens out a little bit more as it dries, but yeah, absolutely lovely. Okay, the next thing I want to share with you, and I'm very impressed by, is embossing, doing heat embossing. So using Versamark watermark stamp pad and embossing powder to stamp your sentiment. Now, if we move the MISTI out the way for a minute, and how we would normally, oh, let me just show you the stamps first, sorry. I've got my favourite thing, stamps, and these are called, what are they called? Simply Fab Sayings, and I've grabbed the Beautiful out of there. So yeah, move that aside. How we would normally heat emboss. So we would obviously mount our stamp, go over a piece of paper with an embossing buddy just to get rid of any static. Stamp up our Beautiful. Give it a good press down. Now obviously we can't go back in and put any more Versamark on there, so we've just got one covering of Versamark. We're going to tip our embossing powder on here, tap off the excess, and you can see it hasn't covered very well. Now I can obviously dip it back in again and try and get a little bit more on there, and yeah, it's picked up a little bit more, but it's still not that black. Okay, now I'll heat set it for you so you can see what that's like. And obviously we've all done that hundreds of times, we know how this works, and sometimes you get a great coverage and sometimes you don't. So let me quickly heat set that for you. Okay, so that's that heat set. Now it's okay. I mean, you can see I rushed a bit and didn't brush off all the little splatters there, but the actual sentiment is okay and it's usable. And in the past, obviously, we would have used it and we'd be more than happy with it and it's fine. But let me show you how the MISTI does it. So we've got a piece of card, pop it down into the corner. Just wipe it off, sorry. Down into the corner, still going with their embossing buddy, exactly like we normally would. Let me grab my sentiment again. Pop it on there. Pick it up. Ink up with our Versamark. And stamp. Now that's all good and well, that's exactly the same as we just done when it was on our clear block. But now we can go and put a second layer of Versamark on there because nothing's moved. So like we've done with just the double stamping or triple stamping, we now can do exactly the same but with Versamark. And just to show you how good this can be, I'll do a third coverage and put that on there. Okay, so now I'll do the powder exactly the same as I've done before. Grab my little scrap piece. Now already I can see it's picked up loads more powder, but we can still do it a couple of times to make sure. Tap off on the excess. And I'll heat set this one again. is far superior to our original one. Now I don't know if you're going to see that very well on the camera, but I promise you in real life this is much better. You've got a thicker covering of powder. Obviously you put down more Versamark, so there's more sticky on there, so there's more for the powder to stick to. So you've got a nice thicker sentiment, and this is a little bit more patchy, not picked up so much powder, and obviously doesn't look as good. Usable, but not as good as this, and if you want it to look the best it can look, this is much better. Yeah, so that's that. Okay, so on to my final tip for the MISTI is ombre stamping. Now this is really popular at the moment, and there are a lot of ink pads that you can buy that have multiple colours in there, but if you don't want to buy more ink pads and you've got plenty already, then just use the ones you've got. And this makes it really easy to do ombre stamping without getting all your ink pads all muddled up and, you know, the dark colours in with the light colours, etc. So again, I've grabbed a sentiment, and this is an Autonu stamp set called Superscript, and we're going to stamp that, and we're going to stamp it in an ombre type fashion. So pick up this. I'm going to start with Mermaid Lagoon. So I'm going to stamp on some of the stamp and pop that over. Again, it hasn't stamped perfectly, so we're going to go in again and put a little bit more ink down to get rid of that blotchiness. And of course nothing's moved, so it's all good. Then I can clean off my stamp and go in with the next colour, which I want as peacock feathers. So you want to overlap, so I've stopped here on about the E, so I want to go back a little bit from the E, so that it overlaps the E, so you get that soft sort of blend of colours. Like so. So this has now gone from my Mermaid Lagoon, and now we're on our peacock feathers, but it's got a nice soft blend there. Again, we'll put a little bit more colour in. And that's it for the peacock feathers. Clean off the stamp, but we haven't moved it at all, it's in exactly the same place. And then I'm going in with cracked pistachio. Now you can obviously use any colour combination you want, this is just the first three inks that I grabbed really. Over again, and because that's quite light, that actually needs a third covering, which isn't a problem. And that's it, so you've got this lovely ombre stamping from your Mermaid Lagoon, peacock feathers and cracked pistachio, but just a nice blend in between where you can overlap and just close the door and go back over again and get some more colour on there. So that's it. So I hope you've enjoyed my tips for the MISTI. As I say, I'm not an expert, and I know there's plenty more things out there that you can do with it, but these are the things that I've found are really, really helpful at the moment, and I'm enjoying doing in my card making, and I'm sure you will too. Now, the MISTI is quite an expensive, like considered purchase for your craft room, but I really do think it's one of those things that when you've got it, you won't want to be without it. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like it, and subscribe for more videos very soon. Thank you. Bye.